For hanging in there. One more panel here. We have some really important voices. Should be interesting. My name is Hugh Eden. I work for Jefferies and the Maritime team. I'd like to ask each one of our panelists to introduce themselves, their businesses, how they fit within the Jones Act, and then we'll jump into Q&A. John, would you like to?
I'm Captain John Konrad. I'm a former U.S. merchant mariner, and now I am CEO and founder of gCaptain.com. And I've been helping Mark Kelly and Rachel and the team on the Ships Act, and also doing some consulting with the Navy on some of this maritime resurgence and how it fits into the Jones Act.
Good afternoon. I'm Sam Norton. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Overseas Shipholding Group based in Tampa. We run a fleet of 22 vessels today, tankers and ATBs. Jones Act is the vast majority of our business and has been for a long time.
Good afternoon. I'm Ben Bordelon. I'm the President and CEO of Bollinger Shipyards. I mean, the talks lately have been, I guess I'm good to be a shipyard. I'm glad somebody told me that now. But we have 10 different yards. I'm third generation. My grandfather started our business. We have 4,000 employees, and we do government, commercial, municipality, engineering, everything. So thanks for having me.
Good afternoon, Dan Thorogood. I'm the CEO of Fairwater. That's a newly formed joint venture between Crowley and Secor Holdings. We have approximately 31 Jones Act tankers and ATBs operating in the energy trades, and we operate vessels for third parties as well in the US and foreign flag. Thanks for having us.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. So we've had a lot of discussion today on Ships Act and the ramifications politically and for the industry. Can we reset briefly on the Jones Act and how each one of us participates at and why it has been successful? Dan, might you kick off?
In at the deep end. Well, I guess the Jones Act is, in some ways, is the original Ships Act. When you look at what the Ships Act is starting to talk about, some of the demand stimulation comes from requiring the future vessels and the future fleets to be moving commodities on U.S. flag bottoms. The Jones Act effectively does something substantially similar, but it's a trade lane requirement. So when we're trading between two U.S. ports, whether it's containers, petroleum, or anything else, it has to be on a U.S.-built, U.S. flagged, and U.S. crewed and U.S. owned asset. It's been foundational. And I think is effectively the reason you can have a discussion around the Ships Act today is because we have a springboard, which is the Jones Act. And the merchant marine base that we have, in my estimation, you can probably tell from my accent, I don't come from around here, we are far ahead because of the Jones Act in terms of sort of a Western first world mariner base. We really do have a big merchant marine mariner base compared to some of our European friends. So it's a good jumping off point. Hand it back to you.
So I'll try and echo what Dan has said, and I think trying to frame this panel's message to you this afternoon, how to look at the Jones Act and how it has been successful and how to translate those successes into expanding the U.S. flag in the international trades. I think it really starts with an understanding that in the Jones Act, we have three key ingredients that we're able to put into play. The first is cargo. The cargo is mandated by the cabotage laws that exist in this country. That cargo creates the platforms to be able to then employ mariners, and those three elements create a clarity of consistency that allows companies like Dan and mine to invest in assets that are expensive, that have to be operated over multiple decades, and give the confidence to the people that are thinking about a career in the maritime industry, where some of the panelists before have said it takes 8, 10, 12 years to be able to rise to the levels of senior officers. All of this demands a clarity of consistency. And so when I look at and I listen to the speakers today, whether it's the shipbuilders or the ship owners or people that are aspirational and trying to look at deploying capital, the message that I think needs to be reverberated time and time again is there has to be a long-term plan, there has to be clarity of consistency. If we get those elements right, then we can succeed in putting cargo, crew, and assets together to be able to expand the U.S. flag.
And Sam, what about the criticality of its existence today?
Sorry, again?
About the criticality of the Jones Act and its existence today.
So, there's clearly some controversy around the Jones Act. Some people look at it as kind of corporate subsidy or corporate welfare. I don't think that's right at all. I think that we as a nation, most of us would make a choice to say that there are certain critical skill sets, critical assets, critical services that are necessarily maintained within this country. The question is how best to pay for that. Dan and I are trading in the liquid bulk commodity trade business. When we transport fuel oil or gasoline or diesel from Gulf Coast refineries to consumption points in Florida or along the East Coast of the United States or up and down the West Coast of the United States, we build those ships in the United States. Everybody's acknowledged that that's expensive. We crew them with U.S. mariners. Everybody acknowledges that that's expensive. We're taxpayers. We pay Social Security. We pay health care. We provide pensions through our union partners. All of this creates cost, but we're able to spread that cost to almost an invisible transportation differential. If you look at the additive cost of a U.S. flag in the Jones Act versus the cost of an international flag that's operating there, from a liquid bulk transportation point of view, you're looking at cents per gallon. Cents per gallon. So that's a spreading of that cost across the broader community in a way that allows us to sustain those critical elements of mariner professionalism, shipbuilding capacity, and ultimately a maritime infrastructure that supports all of that.
John, anything to add from the media perspective and your engagement with policy?
Well, I'm pretty prolific and willing to share my views on a wide variety of things online, and running gCaptain over the 15 years. The one thing I absolutely refuse to talk to about on social media, on my thing, is the Jones Act. So, of course, Matt and Mike here put me on the Jones Act panel. And the reason is because both sides, the lobbyists, you got Cato and Libertarian Institutes on one side who are fighting the Jones Act, and you have a very strong Jones Act lobby in the United States that supports the Jones Act. And anytime you talk about it, and anytime you talk about potential reforms or anything else, it's the third rail. You can get zapped, and it can have real consequences. So without talking about what the Jones Act is, I think it's very important to start what the Jones Act is not. Because when this media comes up, when there's a new editorial in the New York Times or on CNN about the evils of the Jones Act or how great it is, they bring in a lot of things that have nothing to do with it. The Navy does not follow the Jones Act. There are other laws that are pertain to that. The Maritime Security Program, MARAD, they are not Jones Act vessels. A lot of those ships are built overseas, and they don't have nothing to do. International trade does not have to do with the Jones Act. And the Jones Act is not just ships. It is all the ferries and the tugs and that are going in our inland rivers that have nothing to do with ocean shipping. So I think this is the first thing is a basic education. There are great things about the Jones Act, yes, and they have to be supported, but there are other things that get brought into the conversation that have nothing to do with the Jones Act. And finally, I want to say, because when I first got involved with the Ships Act meeting, it was Waltz's team, before even Kelly's team, they said, what do you help out? And I said two things. We start this small because the maritime industry in the U.S. has been promised so many things over the years, and those promises have been broken. For example, every merchant mariner got free health care, marine hospitals. We were supposed to be brought into the VA system, and we weren't. So now when we're promised, hey, let's forget about the Jones Act and go on to something else, we don't trust the government. So this is why there's strong support in it. But I want to say right here is, when we started the Ships Act, I said, this is not going to touch anything with the Jones Act. Let's see what we can do that doesn't go against or for it, because of these forces that come around, and because the truth is every single senator and congressman on the Hill today, at least since John McCain left, is a supporter of the Jones Act. So half can try to fight it, and other half can try to strengthen it, but it's pretty solid right now from a legislative and DC perspective. So what else can we do to help the U.S. flag fleet?
Yeah, thanks for that, John. Ben, maybe I'd pivot the question to you. Amongst the broad support that we're talking about here today and through legislation under consideration, what are some of the points of weakness that may hold back or could hold back the long-sought revitalization? And specifically as it pertains to Jones Act. You as a shipbuilder sit at the forefront of that. What do you see as some of the pitfalls?
Pitfalls of what part again? I missed that.
So the weak points in the program today in terms of our broader maritime revitalization, what are your experiences as a shipbuilder, and what could be holding back all of the money and political goodwill?
Yeah, so Dan, I was kind of laughing. I was like, well, if I'm not talking about the Jones Act, you talked about it pretty good. I appreciate that. And I'll say a simple statement. My grandfather, I go back to, we were started in 1946, almost 80 years. And as a kid, he told me to pray for a couple of things before I went to bed. And one was your family, the business, and make sure the Jones Act's here. And I still hold to that, because shipbuilding, frankly, without it, we'd be gone. And it's a much broader thing, and the government obviously understands it. We have support really from admirals and secretaries. Obviously, you mentioned congressmen and senators, et cetera, because it is a national security problem also. I'm a good example. I build for the U.S. government. I have a lot of government programs going on right now. We also do a lot of commercial work. And in between those valleys, I'm substituting my workforce on different programs. And the government absolutely sees and acknowledges that. But to answer your question on viability in the shipbuilding markets right now, I was listening to some of the earlier panels. If you listen to everybody's buying a shipyard tomorrow. We don't have enough. We don't have enough capacity. Well, I could just tell you from my standpoint, I've been an acquirer. I've been buying shipyards now for, decades. I've also closed some, frankly, because there's not a demand. And we've seen peaks and valleys that have happened over the last 40, 50 years that have devastated the shipbuilding industry. That's why we're in the shape we're in. And you go back to World War II, since then it's been a decline. It's just not been a focus. And I'm not being pessimistic, and you talk about the Ships Act, I'm just being, honest of where we are, how we came to this spot. Really, it's visibility and having sustained backlog. So you're asking the big question of what's going to, revamp shipbuilding is that. And there also needs to be some change in strategy of acquisitions. The race to the bottom finish, it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. A lot of the shipyards I've acquired, it's because they were in bad shape. Hanover bought Philly. I looked at Philly. We looked at buying those guys too. Looked at a couple of different things over the years. When you put shipyards in financial constraints, they're going to go broke, they're going to sell, they're going to shut down. I mean, it's just what happens. So we got to have some long-term stability and discipline, not only, from our government, but on the commercial side. I heard a couple of folks talk about, big, long build programs. We need some visibility on that. We don't need onesie-twosies. That is a high-risk type of project that's going to be expensive. guarantee you. You know, we hearing about, you know, the LNG market, or obviously we talking about some of the tank barge market going forward. And I could go through a couple of different things, but shipyards have had success with repetitive long-term contracts.
And Ben, maybe digging in on that, what does that look like, the implications, if you were to become more serial in the production? I mean, soup to nuts, other components of the ship, the labor workforce, what can you do with more lead time?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, one, you could, you know, and I've had these conversations with the White House in years past about you want to bring industrial base back to America, sign long-term contracts, hold some of our supply base accountable to produce here domestically, and they'll do it. You know, we buy engines for, and we buy thrusters for, and we buy valves, et cetera. And we've talked to some of those suppliers, and we said, if we gave you long-term contracts, would you set up shop in the U.S.? And the answer is yes. The other thing, from a repetitive standpoint, I mentioned it earlier, a first-class ship, I'm just going to be honest, it sucks. I don't care who you are, first-class ship is a challenge. As you continue to produce and you get your engineering and your production strategies in line, you do it much quicker. And I have a program we're doing now for the Coast Guard. We just delivered boat 60. As you can imagine, boat 60 to boat 1 is a big difference. And the visibility we have to our production and to our workforce going forward makes us have long-term employees. We celebrating folks that have worked for us 30 plus years, that have built the replacement class of the vessels that actually we built back in the 80s. And we see in the man-hour drops and the material pricing, it all goes down. So having those kind of visibility in programs certainly gives you buying power, but more importantly, you're learning and your investments back in your yard. You know, technology is a piece of that, but the truth is, in order to keep investing, you got to make money. And I'm not embarrassed to say that shipyards need to make money. We certainly do, just like every business. But to reinvest in shipbuilding, we have to have some long-term contracts that are sustainable.
So on that long-term front, Sam and Dan, when you think about your customers, when you think about your mariners, what are some changes, or talk about the limitations? Sam, you've talked frequently about labor and the roadmap to signaling a future in the industry. I mean, what are some of the changes there that could be made?
So I think I said it earlier, and I'm just going to echo Ben's comments that, you know, I look around the room, many people here are in the finance industry. You're looking at cash flows in the future. You're looking at you know, not often financing speculative orders or speculative cash flows that may be highly volatile. And so that mindset is the same mindset that I think all of you can help in advocating for progress in developing pathways to expanding this industry. You know, I've spoken before about a frustration that I have without throwing our customers under the bus. If you look at the oil companies 20, 30 years ago, the oil companies were very integrated in their business plans. You had production, you had distribution, and you had a maritime link between them. We would go to companies, we would talk about being their transportation partners. We would talk about time charters of 5, 10, 15 years, and we would build the stability of our business plans around that kind of consistency in the demand for our ships. Today, in the international market for sure, and even we see it in the domestic market, the trading desks of the major oil companies have become ascendant, and that has led to very short-term thinking in the way that trading desks are willing to take on commitments. It's become a disaggregated model for the integrated oil companies. Yes, they still have production. Yes, they still have distribution, but the traders arbitrage in between to be able to understand where's the best product to be sourced. It may be within system, it may be outside of their system, and then they look at the maritime asset to link all those different pieces as a very short-term commodity that they need to commit to, and they don't want to put their trading book at risk by committing to high-cost assets or longer-term assets that may swing against them in the market term. That makes it very difficult for us to be able to put together longer-term projects, and then that cascading effect occurs. If we can't signal to the labor force that we have consistency of career opportunity and a long-term job platform for people to basically build their lives upon, that makes the recruitment process that much more difficult as we go and try and develop that element of the industry for ourselves.
And Dan, on that, I mean, to recapitalize the fleet requires partnership with your customers. How is that discussion evolving?
It's pretty silent. I don't think there's any charterers in the room that take on Jones Act tankers right now, which probably says something. But I think when you get into the long-term planning and you look at the average age of the Jones Act tanker fleet, which we obviously do at Fairwater, there is a retonnaging requirement that will come. We operate in a closed ecosystem that is well understood, it's stable, and that retonnaging, in my opinion, it will happen, and it will happen with commercial capital supporting it. I think some areas where we would like to see some wins, which building on Senator Kelly's remarks earlier, and some of the things Ben has alluded to, is that there are regulations in place that are outdated. There are technologies that have come forward that have not been responded to by the Coast Guard that could drive significant operating efficiencies for those of us that operate in the Jones Act. And of course, better operating costs deliver better margins, which allow us to retonnage more quickly.
So for long-term thinking, John, how does this relate to the discourse in DC, right? Because we're always discussing what's in the budget, turnover from administrations. How do we surmount those challenges in terms of longevity and underwriting the funding for this industry?
I keep going back. I am like, you optimistic or pessimistic? In the last few months, I have been the most optimistic I've ever been in my entire 30-year career in this industry, and the most depressed at the same time. It flip-flops every couple days. And the reason is because there's this enormous amount of excitement that's happening in DC, every secretary level, president, vice president, Pentagon, Lutnick's office at Commerce is building a whole shipbuilding team, National Security Council, congressmen everywhere asking these questions, and it is real excitement. It is really happening. It is real progress. But here's the thing. Nobody understands U.S. shipping. Nobody understands shipping, period. And I keep telling them, we need capital, and this capital cannot come just from the government. It has to come from this room. And the leading person behind this, pushing all of this investment, is the Navy. And we have mixed reactions to the Navy in this room. Willie's nodding his head here. It's a love-hate relationship. The Navy, there's no Navy officer here. And we're a very segmented industry. I say when I go to a tanker conference, I don't see bulk people. When I go to a bulk conference, I don't see cruise ship people. When I go to a cruise ship conference, I don't see Navy people. When I go to a Navy conference, I don't see finance people. Everything's very segmented, and we have to get together. This is what the Ships Act really did. We got critical people from finance, law, labor, very small group doing the work. And then what we found out when we had the first meeting and everyone in there, I realized that people I'd been working with for 20 years did not understand the other segment. And we work through all of these problems, and then we see these amazing investment opportunities. Sam's company here, when Navy closed down their massive Red Hill storage facility in Hawaii, I'm like, they're going to need tankers. His tanker company's under NAV. It was the biggest stock investment I ever did. And I'm talking to everyone in the industry, and they're like, I don't see investing in U.S. flag shipping. And I said, the Navy's going to need it. And unfortunately, he sold it out to another company before I think the value was really there. But
sorry.
That's the piece. And Rachel was right here with Mark Kelly's office. When we got all those experts together, we also realized that no one really wants to do the work. What I found out is If you go and you write the bill, if you go to the president and you write the executive order, if you actually do the work, the Hanwha graph with this is how it plays out, that's extremely valuable. And you have people like James Lightbourne here, like why every bank in here is not hiring James as a consultant or Sal or these people, getting them in and actually, because everyone with the SHIPS Act is doing it on their off time. We're all doing it after our jobs to put it down. But someone like Rachel Miller at Mark Kelly's office actually sitting down and writing the law by hand, and then it changes. Other people in this room have actually written parts of that SHIP Act, given it, and there's a lot of no. You know, there's a lot of pushback from Congress. Well, we're not giving you this much. But if you actually do the work and create those teams inside the banks, inside multidisciplinary team, hire those consultants, I think the opportunities are amazing, but we have to come together.
Thanks, John. Ben, let me ask you a question about shipyard capacity, which is always talked about. There's maybe some misconception or truth, and maybe you can opine on whether or not the yards are filled with government business. How are you managing those processes, and how do you balance military needs with the urgent need to build more commercial equipment?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'll preface by saying, you know, shipyards are not at capacity right now. There's been a lot of talk about how we need more capacity, more capacity. First thing we need to do is let's fill up what we got first. We're not there. We're not close to there. We're probably in the 65% range right now. So, you know, we look at that point and you go, well, why don't you have more? The answer is because we don't have more backlog. I think America has proven this time and time again. If the market's really good, we're going to overbuild it, period. I think everybody in this room is going to agree to that. If there's that much activity going on, this group in this room is going to find too much money to do it. We're going to have a bunch of investment, and I believe that. We haven't been there lately because there's not been that demand. But the balance is going to be interesting going forward. You know, if everything is true, and I'm optimistic, generally speaking, about the stuff John was talking about with the administration and everything. There's no doubt. I think there's some activity that we've not seen before, and that goes both government and commercial. So balancing that for me is going to be a little bit challenging, but frankly, it's going to be first come, first serve. I mean, for me, I'm going to sit back and go, where's my best opportunities? Who do I want to do business with? Who do I want to partner with from long-term programs that we can have some visibility going forward and make some commitments together going forward. But I will say from a Bollinger standpoint, I'm always going to do both. I think it's important for me to have the government piece, but it's also important to have the commercial piece that keeps my blade sharp, if you want to call it. That, you know, dealing with the government is clunky. That could be changing. There's some talk about being more commercial in the government space. I'm going to believe that when I see it. I've been in a lot of discussions lately over the last 6 months about that exact thing. I've also been in discussions as recently as last Friday that it's not showing that it's not showing that it's going to go more commercial. But I do think the way to get more throughput and to get more activity and producibility out of yards, the way the government procures and contracts, in my opinion, has to change. Some of the bureaucracy it takes on dealing with the things that it takes for us to be a government contractor, frankly, it just takes too long. And there's too much oversight, and there's too much, I'm trying to say it nicely because they are my customers, but it's just a lot of BS that I think can be eliminated out of the process. And on the same token, I would love to see it at a point, even from a commercial standpoint, you know, if you're talking about LNG ships or oilers or ro-ros, whatever, having commonality in some type of an engineered solution that you can duplicate is important. And eliminating that, yeah, but I've got this idea that's so special, and then all of a sudden you got to redesign the whole ship. There goes another 18 months, and there goes your learning curves, and there goes your supply base. Some of the things that I think the foreign shipyards do well, they manage that differently. You're going to buy what you're going to buy, and you want to change it, you can do it after delivery. America's been bad at that. We've been very specific on things, and it creates a slowdown and a bog down in it. But to answer your question, how are we going to respond? I think we can do more currently with what we have, and future opportunities. You know, I heard some talk about, you know, building intermodule around, sharing that kind of stuff. We're doing some of that now. I have 10 different shipyards, and we got stuff being built in all of them to support different programs. That model could be expanded. But the truth is we need more visibility, and we need more of a demand indicator and actually contracts. And as much as I love talking about the SHIPS Act and what Trump's doing and all of those things, it's still talk as of today. We need some executable things that are going to produce for us and then hold us to the table, us in this room, and that's going to be the fun part. But I still think we have, you know, 35% more we can do very easily, and there's some things that I have future plans amongst my yards that I could just scale up. But again, I'm not going to go spend $500 million on upgrades on stuff that I don't have in place to support it.
Okay, so looking at the time, we've talked today about execution, we talked about policy, we talked about customer base and crewing. You know, whether it's in policy or just as an initiative or pet project of yourself, what's one thing that, to take this national maritime agenda from good to great, what's something that needs to be prioritized, either in DC or, you know, individually within the industry and events like this? John, you want to start?
Well, I was just consulted on a major shipbuilding policy, and we need ships and we need mariners. Those are the big priorities. But this one company, major bond house, was willing to spend a very large amount of money on a shipbuilding project. And I said, let's not start there. Let's start with $10 million to hire those consultants, the best lawyer, the best marine money. Get marine money in on the table. Get Sal Mercogliano. Get Willie. Get them in on the table. Let's spend $10 million in 6 months to get this right, to get the shipbuilding, you know, talk to Bollinger, get that automation right, and then start building. We have fundamental work that needs to be done, and there are the people in the room, but someone's got to pay to get those contracts, get the plan, and then, as he said, there's a lot of talk, a lot of studies, a lot of exciting things, but whether it's the Navy or MARAD or someone else, someone's got to start writing checks and actually ordering ships.
So anybody who reads anything that I write from time to time is not going to be surprised to hear me say that the most important thing that we can do in the near term is to develop more cargo for our ships. Again, it's a triangular situation. We need crew, the crew need jobs, the jobs need platforms, the platforms only come about if the cargo exists. We, OSG, are in the liquid bulk transportation business. The United States today, you've heard earlier, is a major exporter of fossil fuels, LNG, crude oil, products. This creates an opportunity for us to use that position to build voyages around that cargo and to do it in a smart way to be able to stimulate jobs, maritime, and then to be able to use that economic model to be able to then come to Bend and build ships in order to do that in the future. You know, we do have programs. I know this is a Jones Act panel. We also participate in the tanker security program. There are programs that look at bringing in internationally built ships and then putting the U.S. elements to be able to have that U.S. flag. I think that's a near-term win that we can definitely advance many of the agenda items that we've heard about today. And I think you can then, to your point, you can build on that momentum to figure out ways to then transfer some of that U.S. Foreign flag assets into being assets constructed in the United States. But it starts with cargo.
Please.
All great points. I think, you know, from my side is, I think we need a national maritime strategy that is going to transcend administrations, that is going to last. And look, what Trump's doing is a lot of great things. but he's coming in and wreaking havoc in a positive way to something that is absolutely needed. What I don't need is in 3.5 years if somebody comes in and re-racks it, it is going to set us back decades, literally. So we need something that's going to transcend, that's going to stick on both the government side and commercial, obviously. But on the government side also, in my opinion, we need to really reevaluate the acquisition strategy of how they procure things. I have some strong opinions about how people in this room could help us get there on certain programs, get us there a lot faster. I think there's some acquisition and appropriation type reprieve we can get by having a little more creativity in how we procure in the government space. And again, on the commercial side, you know, you look at the gentlemen on this panel and the ones that were here before. I see Hornbeck in the audience. The commercial is a broad statement. It's almost as broad as you think of how the Navy's defined. You know, people think of the Navy as aircraft carriers, where we have tankers, you know, and then you have destroyers, and then you have supply boats, and then you have the dredge market on commercial. It's a broad market that needs to really be considered because that affects a lot of different shipbuilders around the nation. So I guess just a 30,000-foot level, having a maritime strategy that is, again, it transcends across administrations for us, will give us the best long-term visibility that'll put more investment and more growth in our sector.
You know, I'll just jump in, you know, because we see this in our sector as well. The United States government goes annually in its budget. And so it only appropriates funds for 1 year at a time. And that wreaks havoc with your business because you don't know from 1 year to the next whether the appropriations will be there to be able to continue funding a program. And so a program that you think you're going to invest in and build on the back of can get canceled. And then it's, oh, too bad, sorry, but we changed our mind. I think if we're going to do something in Washington, one of the things that needs to be done is to look at how do you put longer-term programs in place to allow those kinds of series of tankers or series of other ships to be built without having to run into this political nightmare every year of an appropriations process.
Dan, you want to bring us home?
Yeah, I'll just finish it up by tying it all together because I think most of it's been covered. I mean, the Jones Act is clearly foundational, it's clearly stable, and people understand it and invest within the cycle of it. If we use that as a springboard to take the SHIPS Act forward and other things, we get better procurement initiatives out of the Navy. It's the rising tide will lift all boats. Hopefully it will mean we have access to tonnage at shipyards that maybe comes down in price or at least stays steady as we build that ecosystem of marine infrastructure, that the crews will come as we build that out. So I think using it as a springboard to take us forward and support the SHIPS Act, the Jones Act will follow and be better off for it.
Can I add just super quickly? This is the moment. Everything's lined up. Everyone's ready. Next year at Marine Money, we're going to all come in there and say, a few people have made a lot of money and we have progress, or we're not going to have a SHIPS Act and Jones Act panel next year. Like, if we decide we want to make ships, make money, have real opportunity in national security, this is the moment, and it's going to either fade away, that's up to us, or we run at it right now. But we don't have, time is the critical factor.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you to the panelists.
Thank
Gentlemen.
you.